Good Friday morning, everybody. Welcome on into today's FreightWaves Now Community Spotlight. I'm Kaylee Nix, and we've got Mary O'Connell here on the line to talk about one of the coolest communities in freight with your Running on Ice update. Mary, thanks for joining us.
Anytime, guys, you know that this is the one and only place that someone should start their Friday mornings with.
Absolutely. And if you want to chill out with us, we appreciate it. How many more cold chain puns can I make today? I don't know. The limit doesn't exist. But we've got a good conversation once again in zooming in again on the pharmaceutical industry, one of those spaces that relies on the cold chain industry to get it right every single time. Talk to us a little bit about your guest today.
Yeah, so today we get to talk to the one and only PackSafe again. We get to talk to Ivan Castro, and this time we really kind of break down what some of the trends that people are starting to see in the pharmaceutical supply chain is or are. Yeah, what some of those trends are, because there's just the big Lodge of Pharma conference over in France, and as a result, everyone kind of started talking about, okay, well, this is what I'm currently doing, this is what I'm planning to doing, this is areas that are lacking for me, and so that's something that we really kind of dive into is, what does that pharmaceutical space look like in a couple of years? What are some of those trends that we're starting to see? And a lot of it actually is starting to revolve around AI and machine learning in kind of a cool way.
So COVID was one of those events that was pretty transformative for technology in the cold chain supply space. And it was like this rapid transformation because everybody was trying to figure out, okay, how do we manage the vaccine, which was very temperature sensitive? And we saw all of this innovation packed into this very, very tiny window of time. And now that we're removed a couple of years from that big rush, we're starting to see a lot of those strategies be adopted into the broader cold chain technology space. What are some of those changes that we saw, and how is the industry continuing to work on adopting those at that larger scale?
Yeah, so pretty much as the one good thing that came from COVID was that the ability to transport these ultra cold and below zero these vaccines and medications. So as a result, a lot of the drugs that are coming out right now, they are staying at this ultra cold temperature, and it's kind of a new way of transporting drugs and everything like that. So, there are some of these customized therapies that are coming out that have to be delivered and kept ultra cold, and, they have to be delivered within 72 hours or a certain amount of time. So because there are these time constraints on there that were very similar to some of the technology that was in the mRNA vaccines, it's very kind of, there's new options out here, and there's new treatment avenues, which overall will increase, patient quality of life, but it does heavily rely on a successful and efficient supply chain.
Of course, one of those things that we have to talk about is risk and resiliency, because as you mentioned, a lot of these technologies and a lot of the things being transported in the pharmaceutical cold chain space are very, very time sensitive, and they're often really expensive, right? So your margin for error is pretty much razor thin when it comes to transporting these. When we're talking about technologies being adopted, how much of them are on that risk mitigation side versus fixing the problem after it happens, that kind of recovery side of things?
I would say in a perfect world, it would be like a nice even split, but realistically, it's going to be more of those kind of those risk mitigation things, because, for the longest time in cold chain, there hasn't been all this great technology. There hasn't been all these advancements. It's just been Joe in the warehouse who's worked in that warehouse for 30 years or 20 years or long enough that he just kind of knows, oh, if this product is going here, it's going to take X amount of dry ice, X amount of packaging, et cetera, et cetera. But when Joe's not there, nobody else really 100% knows what to do. So unfortunately, every organization can't just have a Joe working 24/7. Joe does need days off. So that's where some of that risk mitigation comes in, of knowing, okay, well, if I don't want to spend X amount of time or money on having all of this dry ice around, then let's look at some of those other things, and let's look at, okay, well, how risky is this route? Can I ship to Colorado during blizzard season? It's something that everybody has to think of, and that's where a lot of those risk mitigation tools are coming in, because it's not just, oh, this got here late, and this, maybe a pallet of lettuce is spoiled, and okay, that sucks. No, unfortunately, this is not just a pallet of lettuce or fruit or vegetables, which obviously we don't want spoilage there, but it's not ultimately the end of the world. This is potentially medicine that could save someone's life or is desperately needed. And if there's any kind of, quality control or that any kind of temperature drop, it could potentially be completely spoiled or do significant harm to people. So that's why it's really, really important to have a lot of these visibility and tracking and these risk mitigation tools, because it's ultimately at this like going inside of somebody, and no one's trying to make someone sick.
You hear that if you are Joe in the warehouse, bring this to your bosses as proof that you deserve that day off. Mary, let's wrap it up by talking about emerging trends in the pharmaceutical industry specifically. Was there anything that stuck out to either you or to Ivan about some things that are coming down the pipeline and what we should be watching for?
Yeah, it's actually the rise of AI and machine learning in pharmaceuticals. I know we're kind of seeing it throughout the supply chain in general, but it's kind of, rising, well, for lack of a better comparison, it's like rising on steroids in the pharma world, because there is all of that extra need for that data, for that temperature, for that visibility. And so as a result, that is something that all like shippers and carriers and everyone are asking for. So it's really kind of the rise of that, and how that can everyone can like work together to have a pretty successful supply chain that hopefully doesn't have that much loss, because honestly anything that people can do to minimize loss throughout the supply chain will forever be a game changer.
Less loss is always better. More loss mitigation is always better. Mary, thank you for joining us here this morning, and we'll talk to you next Friday.
Awesome. Thank you guys.